Have you ever dreamed about what the 4-day work week could do for you? Imagined having one extra day to yourself every single week? Well, I have been trying this year, and I am here to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly about what this transition has looked like for me. Welcome to the Do More, Stress Less podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Hasselberger, a time management and productivity coach. In every episode, I give you actionable, practical tips to help you learn to use your time in a way that feels good to you every day. No more hustling, scrambling, or struggling to keep your head above water. So let's dive in, and soon enough, you'll be doing more and stressing less. As you may or may not know, in January, I decided that I was going to experiment with a 4-day work week to see if it would work better for me and for my business than the standard 5-day work week. Now, at that time, I also promised that I would give everyone an update and I'd tell you what was going on. And because we're now way more than halfway through the year, it's time for me to make good on that promise. Now, I'd be lying if I said that this has all been roses and that it's been smooth sailing all year long. But I'm definitely going to keep this experiment running for the remainder of the year. And I won't make a call about whether or not I'm going to make it permanent until the end of the year. I do want to give it a good old college try. And so I want to report back for you what's happening, right? What's been happening so far as I've been going through this experiment on my own. So, first, I'm going to share with you the good stuff. Now, having one weekday each week where I don't need to wake up to an alarm, I mean, I am a night person, has been amazing. Now, I'm a total night owl, as I just said, and I can't even tell you how good it feels to know that come Friday, there's no alarm that's going to be waking me up before I'm good and ready. Now, it's also pretty amazing to have a day at home to do what I want with when no one else is there. And that actually is the key. Now, honestly, this isn't even something I really anticipated before this experiment. I thought it would feel kind of like a 3-day weekend, but it's actually a totally different thing. Now, on the weekend, well, I still have responsibilities to my family, right? I'm cooking 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My kids need me for stuff. Weekend days, as every parent knows, are not necessarily free time. But now I have Fridays. And trust me, I still get a lot of stuff done on Fridays, but it's really lovely to have no one else around needing me for anything. Now, I want to share with you some of the less good stuff because, it hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been a super easy transition. So I want to share with you the full breadth of what's going on. So the less good. Now, I've made some exceptions. It's not been perfect, right? Sometimes I have a client who wants to hire me to facilitate a workshop, and the only day that works for them is Friday. And on those occasions, I've made an exception. I've only made a handful of them, but so far, I'm not feeling great about the fact that I've had to make exceptions, even though I kind of understand now that this might be part and parcel for what it is. It's also been a really humbling experience for me to try to recalibrate my workload from a 5-day week to a 4-day week. Now, prior to this experiment, I was pretty darn efficient already, right? After honing my skills around this stuff for many years, I didn't have a lot of like fluff in my schedule to work with, and so it's actually been quite difficult, far more so than I actually expected, to kind of recalibrate task realism. The idea that I want to assign myself only as much as I can actually do in any given day to this 4-day work week instead of the 5-day work week. It's been a real learning process. And I have to admit that I'm not perfect at this yet. And quite frankly, I may never be perfect at it because perfect is an illusion. It's not real, right? But I want to continue to get better. There are definitely more weeks than I'd like to admit that I was a little overzealous about what I could get done. I had to recalibrate. But I'm improving my realistic planning skills week by week, right? I had 25 years to kind of hone that for a 5-day work week. And so I really shouldn't expect myself to have honed it so clearly in only a few months. But the last, several weeks or so, I've been kind of back at this task realism point where I'm really only planning for the things that I actually have time for in my day. And I got to tell you, that feels good. It's definitely also renewed my empathy for my clients, most of whom also struggle to come to grips with the fact that they're just not going to be able to do everything that they want to do in the short time that they want to do it in, right? That's been hard for me as well. And while, of course, this is something that I empathize with all the time, it's renewed that empathy on like a visceral level for me. I've also found that taking Fridays off has kind of negatively affected my Mondays. And this was something I didn't totally think about before, but in retrospect makes sense, right? So for me, Mondays have always been my no meeting day. It's a day that used to be about 80% deep work, creative work, writing, content, curriculum, that kind of thing, and about 20% like email and admin. Now, because on Monday, I'm also handling all the email that's come in since Thursday around 5 p.m. Monday is not as much about deep work as I would like it to be. It's maybe like 50 to 60% deep work and then 40 to 50% admin and email. So because of that, I'm finding that it is now necessary for me to block off extra time in the week. And I'm experimenting with blocking one extra day in the week for deep work every week or every other week to ensure that I have enough time for all the creative work I need to do, the strategic things I need to do, et cetera, that isn't around just serving my clients and email. So that's the good and the less good. But I also want to share a little bit more about how I'm actually spending my Fridays these days. What am I doing here? So, one of the things that I've done is I moved all doctor's appointments for myself and for my kids to Fridays where possible, right? So that I have more time in the rest of the week that's uninterrupted. I used to schedule these just kind of like when I could throughout the week. I try to schedule them, for my kids after school time. There are actually a lot of doctor's appointments. This may seem like, why are you talking about this thing? That doctor's appointments don't happen that frequently, but I've got my kids' doctor and dentist appointments and orthodontist appointments. I also still have a lot of residual doctor's appointments for myself because I had cancer a couple of years ago. And also, there's just, if you're just trying to stay on top of your health, there's the dermatologist, there's the dentist a couple times a year, there's, your pap smear. There's like all of these appointments that really do need to happen. And then there's the extra cancer appointments on top of that. So moving these doctor's appointments to Fridays has actually been really helpful in kind of the context switching throughout my week. Now, I do still take some calls on Fridays as well, but they are work adjacent and dare I say even fun calls. I'm only doing it if it doesn't feel like work. So, what are these kind of work adjacent but doesn't feel like work calls? Well, there are several colleagues that I like to stay in touch with on the regular, and these chats are generally scheduled for Fridays. To me, this is like fun work. It's kind of like catching up with a friend, just a businessy friend. So it doesn't really feel like work. And I make sure that these are always done by noon so that the afternoons on Fridays are free. I also have been, meeting up with people in real life. I kind of do lunch on Fridays now. So sometimes this is with colleagues, sometimes it's with friends, sometimes it's with my kids if they're off of school, and sometimes it's with my husband if he happens to be working at home that day. And I think the real joy of these Fridays for me is that I've been spending almost every Friday afternoon in the pottery studio, doing pottery in a leisurely, languid sort of way with no timers, no clocks. It's been really an absolute joy. So, will I make this experiment into a permanent change? I haven't 100% decided yet, but all the signs currently point to yes. And I promise that I will give another update near the end of the year to let you know what I decide. But in the meantime, tell me, are you working a 4-day work week? Have you tried it? Is your office doing it? What's working? What isn't? I want to know. And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Do More, Stress Less podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody who could use a little less stress in their life. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're excited to take action or you need a little extra support, check out the free resources available on my website or schedule a free consultation call with me. You can do both of these at alexishasselberger.com. See you next time.